its true desires are. I also, this morning, I received a note that was, I must confess, it was intriguing. It was exciting. Got a note from a guy who said, hey, Rush, these January numbers, I spent a lot of time last week on the raw unemployment numbers. Oh, speaking of that, if you were here last Friday and Thursday, remember we focused not on the 243,000 jobs that were gained or reportedly gained, but rather on the raw numbers, the 2.5 million fewer jobs there were between December of last year, January of this year. Just the raw numbers, 2.5 million fewer jobs, and of that 2.5 million, 1.2 million were simply erased by the government, simply erased. They no longer exist. The labor force participation rate. And two things happened today. One is that there's a story. David Stockman tells a story that back in the Reagan years, an unemployment report came out, and Reagan saw a story in Human Events magazine about the same thing we were talking about Thursday and Friday, the raw numbers versus the seasonally adjusted numbers. And the raw numbers, jobs lost or gained, I forget which it was at this point in the Reagan administration, differed dramatically from the seasonally adjusted numbers. According to David Stockman, who tells the story, that was actually Human Events, the magazine, Reagan saw the Human Events magazine story and at a meeting of his economic advisors said he wanted to focus on the raw numbers. He said, that's what we ought to be looking at here. And according to David Stockman, Martin Feldstein, who was the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors at the time, panicked and said, no, you don't want to look at the raw numbers, and did his best to talk Reagan out of that and looking at seasonally adjusted. Now, the point of the story is that the raw numbers differ dramatically, every report from the seasonally adjusted numbers, and that the seasonal adjustment number has been devised as a way of softening the blow, mitigating the impact of the real unemployment news, and it's something that's been going on a long time. And I wanted to stress last Thursday and Friday, this is not new to the Obama administration. What I was confused about was the dramatic difference in losing 2.5 million jobs from December to January and having the government say, but with our statistical analysis and our seasonal adjustment, we've actually added 243,000. So remembering all of that, I got a flash email today from a guy who said, hey, Rush, take a look at this. And it was a piece from a financial advisor, blogger by the name of Larry Levin, or Levin. I don't know how he pronounces it, Levin. And it was about withholding tax receipts collected by the government through 2011. And there was also the note that I got said, and January's withholding numbers, the withholding taxes that were sent to Washington would be a great indication of employment, would it not, were also down. I said, whoa, this could blow the lid if this is true. But I, El Rushbo, do not ever trust anything that just comes in over the transom. I do not trust anything even from a single blogger or supposed financial whiz. So I farmed this out to some people. It took me about an hour to track all this down because I was in the midst of the rest of show prep, and I'm trying to tell people I want to look this up for me, what I want, and it took a little bit longer. But finally found out this through the year 2011 and its fiscal year. One of the points of confusion in the original email was the government fiscal year is not the calendar year. The fiscal year begins in October. So January begins the second quarter of the government fiscal year. Well, I was concerned about the calendar year, December last year, January to this year. I wanted to see what the collection of withholding taxes was. Well, don't really have that data yet, but we did find out that during the course of 2011, that the withholding taxes, the employment taxes, collected by the government far lower than even the jobs numbers that were reported to have been lost. You would figure that if you're losing jobs, the government's also losing revenue via withholding. You'd also figure that if jobs are being created, as we're told that they were from December to January, that the government's withholding tax revenue would also go up. So we're desperately here trying to find out what actually happened in January on withholding. It looks like it is up, but I'm not sure yet. Still trying to track it down. But we did find it through 2011. It was, in fact, that's not entirely true. This is so intricately woven, this web of deceit, that you could actually take these numbers if I wanted to, and I could show you where withholding numbers, revenue is actually down a little bit for the information so far that we have for January. Anyway, let's try to make some sense out of that as the program unfolds. But regardless, the employment situation in the country is nowhere near as robust and rosy. And in fact, one of the things you have to consider when looking at withholding tax revenue is what kind of jobs are being created. If they're low-wage jobs, then, of course, the withholding number is going to be much less. Tax receipts from withholding will be much less because the wages are much less. It's all intricately woven, but even I, El Rushball, failed to grasp this within the amount of allotted time I had during show prep. We're still working on this because I want to get to the bottom of it. I'm still struck by the difference in that raw number of 2.5 million jobs lost and the government telling us 243,000 were created. The bottom line is this, in a nutshell: the withholding tax receipts number doesn't line up with employment. It doesn't line up. The withholding doesn't line up with the employment numbers, or however you want to cast it as the unemployment numbers. They just don't add up. It's still very confusing. And so games are being played. It's an election year. This Catholic Church is the same thing. And what Obama monkeying the numbers here, jimmying around with things in an election year, designed to make things look better than they are, projected to be better than they are.